In May 2010, Rural Delivery looked at a trial set up by Hawke's Bay Regional Council where man-made floating wetlands were being used to remove nutrients from a waterway in the region. We returned to the bay nearly 2 years later to follow up on that trial and look at another wetland initiative.
The Regional Council is always looking at ways to manage the impacts of land use intensification, and one of those is nutrient runoff into our waterways. Along with that, we're well aware of the virtues of wetlands, and we encourage landowners to look after their wetlands and use them for their filtering and nutrient stripping capabilities. Within that context, we were looking at ways to do the same on Regional Council land. We looked at it to see what we could do to create a wetland in this environment and hopefully reduce the amount of nitrate entering the Tukipo River. We became aware of a new technology called a floating treatment wetland, which is a wetland made of synthetic fibres injected with marine foam and then planted out with desirable plant species. From this particular wetland, our expectations were we would achieve reductions in the nitrate level of up to 90%. Certainly above 50%, but 60, 70, 80, 90 would have been excellent. The technology, we have proven that it does work in this context, but not to those levels. We're in the range of 2 to 3%. We have had a monthly reduction of up to 10%, but not enough to convince us that it's worth progressing with this at this stage and putting it in an on-farm situation. The reason it hasn't worked is because of high flow rates and high dissolved oxygen levels. Where the floating wetland has worked really well in this context, on two fronts, the actual root mass that was required to establish underneath the wetland itself, that has established and established very well, and the biofilm, which is pivotal to the denitrification process and is required to establish on the root ball, has established, and they're the key to this whole process. Other benefits that have been observed over the last couple of years have been the biodiversity benefits underneath this wetlands. Reports from the technicians that have been doing the monitoring, the prolific growth in the number of macroinvertebrates such as snails and the like, and as well as fish, bullies, has been readily observed. We're keen to leave it in this context for another 12 months. We've got another couple of ideas that we want to try. Should that not prove fruitful, we will look at relocating this wetland either within the region to some stillwater environments, or perhaps look at resale options.
You're on Robert and Debbie Wilson's bull beef block, and what you've got here is an area of a lot of springs coming up from the shallow aquifers, so we're really keen to see farmers doing this type of thing, protecting their waterways and enhancing wetlands. This particular wetland's been functioning for since 2004, and over that period we've got some really good results from our scientists who have been monitoring it. They've been monitoring for the usual suspects, so dissolved nitrogen, E. coli, phosphate and those sorts of things. The two wetlands aren't that dissimilar in that they're using plants and they're using the bacteria associations with the plants to carry out those nutrient stripping processes. The key difference is here, instead of having the roots dangling in the water like they were on the floating wetland, you've got these boggy margins. The same sort of thing, you're getting this enormous surface area for those bacteria to do the job. Because we're getting that increased residence time, the denitrification levels have been really impressive, something like 60 to 70%. I think in our last visit it was up around 90. The other ones vary to some extent, it depends what else is going on up in the catchment. What it did show is that when E. coli levels were high upstream, the wetland was really efficient at reducing those levels.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.